Hello, glad to see you on the channel. Subscribe, give a like, and don't forget to leave a comment. Enjoy watching.
Your style is too old school, Jace McMillan said, his voice floating somewhere between smug condescension and PR-polished sympathy, like he was doing me a personal favor by ripping my career out from under me. He didn't look up from his tablet when he said it, just sat there in his ergonomic throne, behind the glass-top desk I'd built with my own two hands back in 2007, tapping away at a severance email like it was an item on his lunch order. I just stood there and nodded. Didn't give him the satisfaction of a flinch. 20 years on the job. Hell, I'd been there before the company even moved into this building, and they sent a boy with a clipboard to gut me like I was a line item. Said they were going in a new direction, like that direction wasn't straight off a damn cliff. He kept talking. Something about streamlining, shifting culture, needing digitally native thinkers, or some other garbage he picked up in a TED Talk. I wasn't really listening. I was looking around the office, at the framed safety awards I'd earned, still on the wall behind his desk like they were his. At the photo of his golden retriever in a Halloween costume, sitting where my wife's photo used to be. At the fire inspection pass I'd signed just last week, the one I knew for a fact was half fiction, because he made me fake it. Then he offered the kicker, a 2-week severance. 2 weeks. After 20 damn years. No pension, no goodbye lunch, not even a donut with my name on it. Just a digital signature on a PDF and a security guard named Kyle waiting to escort me out like I was a threat. I took my box, my framed Employee of the Year 2013, my lucky tape measure, a couple of old notebooks full of graphite and truth, and walked down the hallway past a row of glass offices filled with 20-somethings pretending to know what the hell they were doing. Nobody looked up. No one said a word. The air smelled like lavender air freshener and fear. And then it happened. Right as I hit the lobby, just past the coffee machine they installed last quarter with a subscription service and organic oat milk, the alarm blared. Not the soft chime of a drill. Not a test. This was a real one. Piercing. Panicked. A strobe light kicked in above the elevators, and the building shuddered with the kind of energy you don't fake. I stopped, turned, watched the confusion ripple out from the front desk. Phones lit up. People froze. Call the guard blinked like a deer in headlights. And I just stood there, holding my box like it was a baby. Something's wrong, I said out loud, mostly to myself. And I knew, deep in my bones, in that part of me that had once pulled a toddler out of a smoldering nursery on a Tuesday morning in '06, I knew exactly what it was. Let me back up. My name's Tom Rayner, 58 years old. I was the senior fire prevention inspector for a private fire safety firm called Centicon, headquartered in Clearwater, Florida. You've probably never heard of it, but I guarantee you've walked through buildings we certified. Hospitals, corporate towers, fancy hotels with rooftop bars where nobody thinks twice about lit candles near linen drapes. We were the ones who made sure those places didn't go up in smoke. I started as a firefighter back in '89, back when you still got calluses and soot for doing your job. Transitioned into fire inspection in '03 when my knees started to give out and my first kid was born. I wasn't a desk guy, never was, but I learned how to write reports, how to read between the lines of contractor invoices, how to sniff out bullshit hidden in blueprints. Over the years, I earned a reputation. Old school, sure. I used a clipboard when they switched to tablets. I walked every floor myself instead of trusting those wireless sensors they swear are better. But my buildings never burned. Not once. My initials on a report meant something. Until they didn't. Jace came in 2 years ago. Fresh out of grad school, all smiles and buzzwords, with a jawline sharp enough to slice brisket and the ambition of a cornered raccoon. He shadowed me for 6 months, asked a lot of questions, took a lot of notes, and then one day he stopped asking. Started telling. The culture shifted. Paper trails got murky. Reports went through review phases where paragraphs disappeared. Contractors started slipping him gift cards. I saw it all, smelled the rot, and I raised my hand. That's when the meeting started. Quiet ones. Let's align on expectations, he'd say. Let's recalibrate your role. I played nice. Took the notes. Watched the calendar. Logged everything. And when they stopped giving me real inspections and started giving me office walkthroughs with interns, I knew my number was coming up. But I never expected it today. And I definitely didn't expect the system to fail today. Because that alarm wasn't random. It was a direct result of what I'd warned them about. A faulty suppression valve on the 5th floor server room. The same one I red flagged 2 weeks ago. The one Jace had resolved by copying an old certification number and forging my initials. I had proof. Not in the box. I wasn't stupid. It was backed up in encrypted files, timestamped, distributed to 3 separate locations including a burner email I made the night I saw Jay shredding reports after hours. Yeah, old school, right? Sometimes old school just means you know how not to get caught holding the match. As sirens echoed in the parking lot and I watched my former coworkers funnel out of the building with confusion plastered across their faces, I sipped the last of the bad breakroom coffee I'd swiped on my way out. Jace came running down the stairs, phone in hand, face red, sweat already soaking through his fancy performance fabric dress shirt. He saw me. He paused. I raised my cup. He opened his mouth to say something, maybe an order, maybe a threat, but I beat him to it. You should check the 5th floor, I said calmly. Might want to call IT too. I hear smoke and servers don't mix. Then I turned around, walked across the parking lot, and didn't look back. So, let me ask you something. What would you do if your boss smiled in your face while gutting your job behind closed doors? If the kid they hired to replace your experience with shiny degrees got your office, your title, and then had the nerve to screw it all up? Would you walk away? Or would you let the truth speak for itself? Because me? I didn't start the fire, but I sure as hell knew where it was going to hit first. 3 weeks before the alarm ever went off, before the cardboard box, the hallway silence, and that tight smirk on Jace McMillan's smug, untested face, I had already seen the writing on the wall, and for once. It wasn't written in dry erase marker in a conference room full of buzzwords and catered lunches. It was buried deep in inspection reports I didn't sign, discrepancies in logbooks I hadn't touched, and equipment I'd supposedly tested but never laid eyes on. Little things at first. Wrong dates. Missing pages. Sensor data that didn't make sense. A few mysterious file name changes. Nothing anyone else noticed. But when you've been doing this as long as I have, your gut picks up what your brain hasn't caught yet. It started with the Bay Street job, an apartment tower going up fast enough to make your ears pop. Big client. Investors from out of state. They wanted it operational by summer, and summer in Florida isn't a time you want to screw around with untested sprinkler systems and faulty exhaust fans. I'd flagged 4 issues on my preliminary walkthrough. Duct clearance too narrow for regulation, fireproof caulking missing in the stairwell risers, and an entire junction box that was wrapped in something closer to duct tape than any UL-listed material. I wrote it up, sent the report through the new digital system, and expected the usual back and forth with the contractor. But instead, my notes came back clean. No issues. All 4 items marked resolved with my initials somehow attached, electronically, of course. No handwriting. No fingerprints. Just my name, floating there like a ghost in a report I never saw again. I went to Jace the next morning, held the tablet up, asked him straight, "Why is this signed off?" I never closed this report. He didn't even blink. Just gave me that frozen chicken smile of his and said, "Tom, the system automatically logs final approvals based on workflow settings now. You must have clicked through without realizing." I hadn't clicked anything, and I knew damn well what workflow settings meant. That night, I stayed late. No one noticed. Most of them cleared out by 5:30 sharp. They liked to talk hustle culture, but nobody really wanted to hustle once the cold brew keg kicked off for the day. I pulled every report with my name on it from the last 60 days. Cross-referenced my calendar, physical notebooks, everything I had. I found 6 reports I didn't write. All of them passed. All of them in high-profile properties. And all of them falsified with perfect formatting, seamless alignment, and all the charm of a forgery done by a machine built to lie clean. I printed the worst one, the Bay Street report, and stuck it in my jacket. Old school, remember? Then I walked down 2 flights and knocked on the cubicle of the only person left who might still care about doing the job right. Maria Chavez. She'd been my partner for 7 years, back when we still used walkie-talkies and physical blueprints. We'd climbed through attics together, crawled behind food service hoods, and once even kicked in a faulty emergency exit during an active evacuation because the contractors forgot to install the release hardware. She was sharp, no nonsense, and could spot a photoshopped inspection photo from 20 feet away. But lately, they'd stuck her on internal auditing, which meant inputting Jace's numbers into spreadsheets and pretending it was real oversight. "Do you trust the new reporting system?" I asked her. She didn't answer right away, just took off her glasses, rubbed her temples, and said, "What did you find?" I showed her the report. She didn't even look surprised, just tired. "They're fast-tracking approvals," she whispered, even though the office was empty. "They've got bonuses tied to project deadlines. You flag something, it slows them down. They change it before it leaves the server. And you don't get to say otherwise. I leaned in. That's forgery, Maria. It's criminal negligence. She nodded. You think I don't know that? I asked if she had backups. She shook her head. They moved everything to the cloud 6 months ago. I don't even have access to raw logs anymore. Only Jace and legal do. I should have walked away. Should have let it go. I had a mortgage, a daughter in grad school, and knees that hurt like hell when the humidity kicked up. But I'd seen what happened when shortcuts turned into tragedies. I still remembered the blaze on Monterey Street. 3 dead because the suppression system failed. One of them a baby. And that one had passed inspection too. Just not by anyone who showed up to the damn site. So I started documenting. Everything. I didn't say a word to Jace. I just played the dumb old guy role they liked me in, slow to log in, always asking about printer settings, while every night I pulled records, copied screenshots, used my home scanner to grab anything physical, stored it on a drive hidden in the air vent behind my water heater. Paranoid? Maybe. But paranoia is just experience spelled differently. And it kept getting worse. A week later, we had an internal email go around. Subject line, streamlining legacy staff roles. No names. No firings. Just a lot of soft language about redefining responsibilities and upskilling opportunities for team alignment. I read between the lines. So did Maria. They were greasing the rails. Then came the meeting I wasn't invited to. Company-wide. All hands, they called it. But somehow my calendar never got the invite. I only found out because the intern sitting near me asked if I was excited for the bonus announcement. When I asked Jace about it, he gave me that look, the one people give stray dogs at bus stops, and said, must have been a tech glitch, Tom. Don't worry, nothing important. Nothing important. That meeting unveiled a new investor partnership. Millions in new development. New leadership roles, new market expansions, and a list of core contributors they praised for excellence. My name wasn't on it. Jace's was. 3 times. I should have been furious. But honestly, what I felt was older than anger. It was something closer to mourning. Like watching your childhood home get turned into a Starbucks. So I packed up early, went home, opened my basement laptop, and started building a digital trail they wouldn't see coming. A quiet, methodical backup of everything I knew. If they wanted to erase me, I'd make damn sure they couldn't erase the truth. Because I might have been old school, but I knew how to play long. And I wasn't planning on going quietly. There's a kind of silence that settles over a man when he knows what's coming but no one else around him does. Not because he's clairvoyant or paranoid, but because he's been there before, felt the shift in the air, seen the pattern in the madness, and knows exactly how this story ends if nobody speaks up. That silence had been riding my shoulders for days, heavier than any gear bag I ever hauled up 4 flights in a smoke-filled stairwell. And the closer I got to the truth, the more I realized this wasn't just a few bad calls or corner-cutting contractors. This was rot, thick and deliberate, running from the foundation all the way up through the walls of the building we called Sentai-Con. It was a Tuesday morning, hot already by 8, and I was standing in front of our flagship property. The new headquarters Jace kept calling the future of fire safety. Glass and steel everywhere. Smart sensors embedded in every corner. AI-controlled HVAC systems, biometric access panels, even automated evacuation protocols that sounded good on paper but gave me the creeps whenever I thought about them actually being needed. It was the kind of building designed to impress investors who'd never been inside a boiler room, and I'd been assigned to review compliance, which in practice meant walking around with an intern and pretending like his iPad checklist meant something. The intern's name was Nathan, bright-eyed, polite, a little too eager to please, which is corporate speak for terrified to screw up. He kept asking me where I thought he should put the virtual inspection tags, and I kept pointing to actual violations that he didn't have a box for. Exposed wiring behind a wall panel in the 3rd-floor kitchenette. Improper spacing between fire dampers and structural beams. A junction box installed sideways, in the server room ceiling with wire splices that looked like they'd been twisted by a blindfolded raccoon with arthritis. I said, Nathan, do you see this? He looked up from his screen, blinked, then said, yeah, but I don't think that's in the checklist app. I just stared at him. He shifted nervously and muttered, should I log it anyway? Damn right you should, I said, too tired to sugarcoat it anymore. You don't build a fireproof building with apps and checklists. You build it with eyes, hands, and people who give a damn. He looked at me like I was speaking Latin. That's when I realized the game had already changed. Later that day, I checked the official inspection log from my desktop terminal, one of the few still connected to the internal system before they switched everything over to cloud accounts locked behind dual authentication only Jace controlled. The entry for the server room was marked pass. My name was on it again, and the timestamp? 2 hours before I'd even walked through the damn door. That's when I knew for sure. It wasn't just someone making mistakes. This was active, coordinated. Someone was ghost signing my credentials, pre-approving inspections, and backdating them to cover their tracks. And it wasn't just happening on big sites. I found traces in the fire suppression logs from a pediatric clinic, a residential tower downtown, even a small charter school that had just finished renovation. The implications made my stomach twist. You don't mess with fire suppression systems unless you're either desperate or criminally stupid, and I was starting to think Jace might be both. Because all it would take is one faulty system, one spark, one non-functioning valve during a real emergency, and suddenly those shortcuts start showing up in body bags. I took my findings to Maria again. This time, she didn't try to talk me down. She looked through the folder I'd compiled, printouts, redacted memos, screenshots from internal systems, some taken with my own phone since I wasn't allowed admin access anymore. Her face turned pale. "This is enough," she whispered. "If you send this to OSHA, they'll bury it," I said. "Or they'll bury me." That night, I took a step I'd hoped to avoid. I contacted someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Ed Mallory, an investigative reporter who used to work the fire beat back when Clearwater still had a functioning Metro desk. He owed me a favor from back in the day, a story I helped him break about faulty sprinkler installations in low-income housing that saved lives and made enemies. I sent out a zip file with a subject line that just read, "For when the match hits the fuel." No explanation. No warning. Just the truth, packaged and waiting. But I wasn't done yet. I started digging into Syndican's most recent acquisitions, the ones Jace had been bragging about during those Team Sync meetings where we all had to smile and nod at slides filled with phrases like vertical integration and agile compliance solutions. One of those properties, a tech firm with proprietary fire control algorithms, had recently licensed their software to us. Guess who signed the approval contracts? Jace. Guess who never tested the system before deploying it to our headquarters? No one. Because the testing logs didn't exist. I pulled the building schematics for HQ from a city planning database. The real ones, not the PR glossy renders. What I found made my skin crawl. The suppression system in the server room, the same room with the janky junction box and the weird hissing I'd noticed 2 days prior, wasn't connected to a failsafe. There was no manual override. It was fully digital, fully automatic. If something went wrong, if the system glitched, or the sensors misfired, or the relay failed, there'd be no way to shut it down or turn it on. Nothing but a system alert that someone would have to notice in real time. No redundancy, no backup. In my notes that night, I wrote one sentence that I circled and read. If this burns, it burns everything. I knew I had to act. But I couldn't go full whistleblower yet, not without being fired, discredited, and probably sued into the ground. So I did the next best thing. I built a timer. A digital package, encrypted and time-locked, set to send itself if I didn't log into my secure server every 72 hours. Inside, every report, every image, every log entry and cross-reference I could pull without raising too many flags. If they were going to erase me, they'd have to erase the truth too. And I wasn't going to make that easy. Not while those wires were still live, buried in the walls, waiting for a spark. The morning it happened, the sky over Clearwater was so blue it almost felt artificial, like someone had photoshopped the clouds out and turned up the saturation just to make the day look innocent. Like nothing could possibly go wrong beneath all that postcard sunlight. But I've been around long enough to know better than to trust a pretty sky. Trouble doesn't always send up smoke signals. Sometimes it brews in silence, buried in ceiling tiles and wrapped in wires so tight you only notice them when they snap. I was already halfway to the office when I got the call from Maria, not through work channels, not her usual careful email or text, but an actual call from a blocked number, which was enough to make my stomach tense before I even answered. "Tom," she said, her voice clipped and breathless. "Something's gone wrong." I didn't need to ask what she meant. Somehow, I already knew. "Headquarters," she added quickly. "The server room. There's a fire." A kind of cold settled into my chest, not panic, but that slow, measured dread that comes when you realize the thing you've been warning about, the thing you've been trying to stop, has finally arrived right on schedule. Like a train no one believed was coming until it tore through the station. How bad? I asked, even though I didn't need the answer. Bad enough, she said. Sprinklers didn't deploy. Suppression didn't kick in. They're evacuating now. Jace is freaking out. And just like that, I was pulling a U-turn, heading straight for the building they'd thrown me out of just days earlier, the one that still had my signature on reports I hadn't written. Where smart systems were supposed to replace judgment and QR codes replaced intuition. I parked across the street from HQ, just outside the perimeter being set up by fire crews and local PD, and even from that distance, I could see the smoke curling up through the air vents on the east side, not a towering inferno, but enough to know something serious had failed. The kind of fire that doesn't roar but smolders, melting insulation and frying circuitry, quietly ruining everything it touches without ever making a spectacle. People were pouring out of the building, most of them clutching phones, laptops, the occasional half-full coffee mug. Nobody looks dignified during a real evacuation, no matter how many drills they've run. I saw faces I recognized, the new kids from compliance, a few contractors who used to nod when I walked past, even Kyle the security guard, looking dazed and a little too pale. And then, of course, I saw him. Jace McMillan, sleeves rolled up, shirt half untucked, pacing back and forth near the command tent with a phone in each hand and the expression of a man realizing, in real time, that everything he'd built on shortcuts and ego was unraveling faster than he could manage. I didn't go near him. Didn't need to. Because while he was trying to figure out how to spin a system-wide failure into a technical anomaly, the real story was already in motion, the truth packed neatly into the encrypted archive I distributed across 3 different secure servers. The same archive Ed Mallory had called me about just the night before. You want me to publish this? Ed had asked, sounding more shocked than skeptical. Tom, this could nuke their whole operation. Then maybe it needs to be nuked, I'd said. Before someone dies. And now, watching the smoke rise from the place where the future of fire safety was supposed to live, I knew I'd been right to prepare. Maria found me near the edge of the crowd, still clutching the burner phone, her face hard and unreadable. She didn't say anything right away, just handed me a folded piece of paper, a printout of the suppression system's most recent diagnostic report. All green, I said quietly, reading the falsified numbers. Generated yesterday, she whispered. Auto-signed by you. I laughed. But it wasn't a happy sound. It was the kind of laugh you make when the final piece clicks into place and confirms everything you feared. They're going to blame this on unexpected failure, she said. They'll say it was a software bug. They'll have to, I replied. They've buried the rest too deep to admit the truth. But what they didn't know, what Jace and his boardroom full of yes-men couldn't anticipate, was that the software logs weren't the only thing left behind. I had physical evidence too. Manual overrides that weren't connected. Email threads where I'd questioned system integrity. A video I'd recorded of the actual faulty relay failing to engage, recorded with a timestamped GoPro I'd hidden in my clipboard the day I saw Nathan skipping safety checks with a smile on his face and an eye on promotion. You see, the thing about old school guys like me? We don't just rant about the new way of doing things. We watch. We listen. We prepare. And while they were automating, digitizing, and optimizing everything to hell and back, I was building a case so solid it could survive fire, flood, or NDA threats. By sundown, Sentai Khan had issued a press release, some nonsense about an isolated systems malfunction currently under investigation. They didn't mention the building had lost its entire network backbone, that terabytes of client data were now unrecoverable, or that the insurance claims team had already requested internal audits on 3 separate compliance reports signed by someone who no longer worked there, someone who never really left. I sat in my truck, engine off, watching the red lights fade and the first wave of firemen start packing up, and for a moment I felt the kind of calm I hadn't felt in years. Not relief, not triumph, but the clarity that comes when a storm finally breaks and you're still standing, soaked but steady. I didn't need to go back into that building, because the fire had already done what I couldn't. It exposed them, burned through the polish, laid bare the lies. And the best part? I hadn't even pulled the trigger. I just watched the match fall into the dry brush and waited for nature to take its course. Because sometimes justice doesn't come in courtrooms or headlines. Sometimes it comes with a whiff of melted plastic and a system failure no one can explain. It's a funny thing, the way silence sounds after the fire's been put out, after the sirens fade and the last engine rolls away, leaving only scorched concrete, the acrid tang of melted wire insulation, and a silence so thick it feels like judgment. Not from the world, not even from the people left behind to sweep up the mess, but from the building itself. As if the walls finally had something to say and decided to scream it in flame because no one would listen any other way. In the days that followed, the spin machine kicked into high gear with all the speed and desperation you'd expect from a company more interested in protecting its bottom line than owning up to its failures. Senecan's official statement went out before the ashes were even cool, packed with phrases like unforeseen mechanical failure, proactive safety audits, and the all-time favorite, out of an abundance of caution. They didn't name names, didn't mention the falsified inspections, the forged reports, or the man they'd pushed out the door just hours before the system he'd flagged went up in smoke. But that was fine by me. I didn't need my name in headlines. I just needed it cleared. The first real blow didn't come from me or the fire itself, but from the insurance adjuster, a lean, gray-haired man named Darren who'd worked commercial property claims longer than I'd been in fire prevention. He had a look I recognized immediately, the weary patience of someone who knows they're about to uncover something ugly and already regrets having to deal with it. When he saw the server room blueprints and cross-referenced them with the automated safety reports, his eyebrows went up in that small, controlled way that only professionals show when they're staring down liability so massive it hums like electricity. According to Maria, who by now had gone fully underground, communicating through encrypted chats and a burner phone she only checked from public Wi-Fi spots, Darren asked to see the original reports, not the digitized ones. When none could be produced, when Jay stuttered through explanations about cloud-based record migration and temporary system inconsistencies, Darren didn't raise his voice. He just started taking notes. A lot of them. And then the dominoes started falling. First, the CTO resigned. Not with a statement or a press conference, but a quiet email sent at 3 in the morning on a Wednesday, citing family obligations and long overdue rest. 2 days later, the board issued a hold on all new construction contracts pending internal review. Rumors swirled. Investors started calling. Clients began pulling inspection files for review, and wouldn't you know it, a few of them didn't line up either. Jace held on longer than I expected. He showed up in interviews, insisted it was a fluke, a hiccup, a non-repeatable systems failure that had unfortunately coincided with an unprecedented traffic spike on the control network. But the more he talked, the worse he looked, especially once a local news station aired Ed Mallory's story. He didn't use my name, just called me a veteran fire inspector with 2 decades of experience, and let the records do the talking. Screenshots, dated reports, video of the faulty relay sparking out with no system response, audio of me, recorded with my permission, explaining, in calm, deliberate tones, how automation had replaced inspection and how safety had become just another line item on a budget sheet. The station ran the piece twice in one day. The third airing got picked up nationally. By the end of the week, my phone was full of voicemails, some angry, some grateful, a few from other inspectors around the country who'd seen similar things and didn't know where to turn. I listened to them all, took notes, and for the first time in years, I felt something like a pulse in my chest again. Not pride, not revenge. Something deeper, something quieter. Maybe just purpose, buried under years of protocol and silence. Syntecan's lawyers tried to reach out, offered me a settlement in exchange for a signature and a smile. Said it was an effort to move forward in a spirit of mutual respect and privacy. I laughed out loud when I read it. Then I forwarded the offer to Ed. I didn't want their money. I wanted them to feel the same powerless frustration I'd felt when I was walked out of the only place I'd ever given a damn about, not because I'd done wrong, but because I was inconvenient. So I said no, didn't sign a thing. Instead, I took a drive. Just me, the road, and a stack of printed emails in the passenger seat, because some habits don't die easy and I've never fully trusted clouds, not digital ones, anyway. I stopped at a little lake an hour out of town. No reception, no cameras, just the sound of water moving slow and the kind of quiet you don't get anywhere near a city anymore. I opened my laptop, not the company one, obviously, but the old beat-up Lenovo I kept for personal things, and logged into the secure site I'd built in secret. I scrolled through the messages. Hundreds of them. Some anonymous. Some detailed. All from people in my shoes, older inspectors, engineers, tech guys, even a few junior hires who'd seen something wrong and didn't know how to speak up. Turns out, old school wasn't a weakness. It was a network. And now it was waking up. I sat there for a while, reading message after message, drinking bitter gas station coffee, and letting the wind carry away the last of the smoke smell from my clothes. The sun was setting, painting the lake in orange and gold, and I thought, not for the first time, about whether I'd gone too far. Maybe I had. Maybe I should have let it go, let the new kids do it their way, and just collect what little pride they left me in that cardboard box. Maybe it would have been easier. But easy doesn't put out fires. Easy doesn't make things right. Easy just lets the wires keep burning until they don't spark anymore. They explode. So no, I don't think I went too far. I think they didn't go far enough. And as for Jace, last I heard, he was on sabbatical. Still has his hair slicked back, still wears those fitted shirts, still tells anyone who'll listen that it wasn't his fault. And maybe one day he'll believe that. Maybe he'll sleep through the night again. But me? I sleep just fine. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't fire or fury. It's knowing that the truth, once lit, burns longer than any lie. And no matter how pretty you build the walls, no matter how smart the systems, no matter how hard you try to silence the past, ashes don't lie.